Hello and welcome to the 13th webinar in 12D's training webinar series. My name is Lisa Stewart and I'm the Marketing and Communications Coordinator here at 12D Solutions. Our 12D training webinars showcase common industry challenges, taking a close look at industry best practices and how these can be implemented using 12D model software. The aim of these webinars is to upskill 12D model users and broaden their understanding of the capabilities of 12D model. We'll keep running these webinars regularly and recording them for posting through our website and on YouTube. The first 12 webinars from this training series, as well as the first 17 webinars from our Industry Solutions series, are available on YouTube if you missed those. During this live presentation, you'll be able to type your questions along the way, as shown on the screen, and we'll answer as many as possible throughout the webinar. At the end, I'll also read out some of your questions to the presenter for his insights if there's time. Today's webinar on creating custom outputs and reports in 12D Drainage will be presented by Dylan Revell, a Regional Sales Manager for 12D NZ with 16 years of experience in civil engineering practice, land development, drainage and construction. This webinar will demonstrate a procedure for the creation of a 3D drainage network from surveyed as-built information, enabling surveyors, contractors and engineers a time-efficient workflow for creating as-built data to be immediately usable for design and output purposes. It will also demonstrate the Drainage Network Editor functionality to export network data back to a text spreadsheet format for checking, editing and updating the drainage data, or creating custom drainage network export to fit an organization's reporting requirements. Over to you, Dylan.
Thank you, Lisa. Welcome to today's training overview or training webinar about creating custom output reports in 12D Drainage. The webinar will be presented in two parts as explained by Lisa. The first part will be importing from a spreadsheet, which will include the creation of a drainage network from an as-built spreadsheet format. Part number two will be the reverse. We'll be exporting from the 12D Drainage Network Editor back into a spreadsheet for the purposes of updating or modifying the drainage network or creating custom output files for custom reporting to your organization's requirements. Who is this procedure for? Well, it's not just for drainage engineers at all. It can be used by construction contractors or contracting surveyors, surveyors in general, designers, drainage environmental engineers, or really just anyone who wants to create or manage a drainage network inside 12D model. Points to note for the webinar. Operations do require the 12D model drainage module. And there are many custom list files installed within 12D model, so don't ever start from scratch. The demonstrated drainage create spreadsheet can be supplied from us either via email or download or on the forum, or I'm sure we can organise Lisa to put in a 12D Synergy link for download. All supplied files are example files only, and feel free to enhance any example files that you like. And if you do enhance those sample files, please share your work with the 12D community. Right, part one, network creation. There are many ways to create a drainage network in 12D model. We're just showing you one of those ways. The demonstrated creation via spreadsheet is just one of them. This spreadsheet provided the early starting point for consistent drainage as-built and pickup for the Skirt Alliance following the Christchurch earthquakes. They made it better, and so can you. So on to the live part of the training and the demonstration, which is creation from a drainage spreadsheet. This example drainage spreadsheet has a list of has a workbook which has your pretty interface for inputting data for creation of the drainage network. These include the line number, the manhole ID, and the northing, easting, and lid level. Now, if you want to create a drainage network, all you require is the green part of the spreadsheet. If you would like that to be a 3D network, then obviously you need the invert levels of the pipe in, the invert levels of the pipe out, and the diameter of the pipe out for 12D to be able to create. So as I say, this worksheet is just the pretty interface where you can input your data, and you can put in different user types, user variables like types, pipe types, and really any other additional information that you'd want captured on that as-built or drainage creation. Getting that into 12D, what we require is in the second tab, the 12D Create Info. We require those same values, but actually with the title and a header for the correct 12D attribute to be able to create. So entering the information in this particular example spreadsheet, and how a typical surveyor or construction person will pick up the drainage inverts is they may take a shot or a level in an X and a Y and a Z on the centre of the pit, and then they may take depth values down to the invert level of the pipe coming in and the invert level of the pipe going out, and in which case this just populates these invert levels in and out. So like any creation of a drainage string inside 12D, before you actually create the drainage string, you need to actually set the defaults. Now there's two toolbars that I have open here on the interface. The first is the attribute toolbar, and the second is the spreadsheet to drainage toolbar. Now both of these toolbars are standard toolbars that are actually installed with your 12D Model 11 setup. And the spreadsheet to drainage toolbar, you generally carry on in this order to be able to undertake this operation. So the first part of the operation is setting your defaults. So when we paste this information into 12D to create the drainage network, it's going to rely on us specifying first a finished surface tin. If you don't lock the lid levels, then it will interpolate those levels. And then we need to set our manhole defaults. Now, all of the pits that are created from the spreadsheet are automatically going to undertake these properties from the drainage manhole defaults. In this case, I've got a default diameter of 1.05 metres, and the type comes from my drainage.4d file, which is an MH1050. And we'll show you in the second part of this training webinar how to very easily bulk update those values from the defaults. And finally, before creation, you need to set what your default pipes are. The default pipe diameter and the pipe type or the pipe class, which again can be overridden once it's created from the spreadsheet. So setting the defaults is the first part. Now the second part is the input directly from the spreadsheet clipboard, and this is done from the second button on the spreadsheet to drainage toolbar, and this populates the drainage input-output interface. This is actually a quite old operation within 12D. If you don't have access to the spreadsheet to drainage toolbar from your company customization, you can find it under Design, Drainage Sewer, More, version 6, pit pipe design interface. So Design, Drainage Sewer, More, version 6, pit pipe design interface, and that will pull you up the same panel. So in preparation for bringing this data into 12D, we're going to go back to the create from spreadsheet actually workbook, and we've got a simple run macro here which takes any data that's taken from the input workbook and populates it through to the 12D create info worksheet. Now to get this into 12D, we can simply highlight all of the information that we want to import and copy that straight up to the spreadsheet clipboard. And inside 12D, once that data is copied up to the spreadsheet clipboard, you just need to enter the model that this drainage network is going to be created into and simply hit paste. And 12D will go through and it will create a 3D drainage model directly from the spreadsheet data. So I have that model currently active inside a plan view, inside a perspective OpenGL view, and the real advantage of automatically creating a 3D drainage network straight from a spreadsheet is that you have all of the instant access to the 12D operations. Now, one thing to note on the actual spreadsheet itself, on the creation, for 12D to know which direction that the flow is going in and which direction that the pipes are going to be created, these need to be entered into a strict format, and it's upstream to downstream. So these are joined via the line ID, so line 1 and line 2, the very upstream manhole to the very downstream manhole, and now instances where pipelines are junctioning into another pipeline or a junction pit within 12D, in which case you'll see there will be multiple instances of a pit's ID in different areas depending on the line that it's created from. So once the data is actually entered into 12D, we can quite simply go in and actually have a look of all of that 3D data that's been created directly from spreadsheet in our typical plan, perspective, long section views, and of course the ability to immediately plot those straight away. Before we look at the plotting, which I'm going to actually run from the Drainage Network Editor, we'll just have a look from the Attributes toolbar. We'll have a look at the attributes that have actually been applied to this Drainage Network on the way in. There's not many. Under the pit, it's purely just taken through those user-defined additional information attributes that we've asked 12D to create from the drainage spreadsheet. Of course, once we go into the network editor, we're going to want a lot of different attributes for use in plotting and reporting and outputting, and they're all automatically assigned once you get to the network editor. So from the spreadsheet to drainage toolbar, or from the menu items or your typical toolbars, you can simply open up the drainage network editor and pick one of your drainage strings to load up that drainage network. Now on the drainage spreadsheet to drainage toolbar, if you're following the major points, we've got one in here, the third button, which is to create a tin. I already have a tin created in this job. 12D does need a tin for the drainage network editor, but you don't actually have to have a tin that's either in the area of that drainage, or in fact the lead levels don't have to match that of the tin, because from the spreadsheet to drainage spreadsheet, all of those are automatically set to manual values, so they are actually as-built lid levels. And as soon as I hit set pit details in the drainage network editor, it's going to ask me what is my finished surface tin and what is my natural surface tin, to allow me to go ahead and run the set pit details, which assigns and calculates a great deal more attributes onto the drainage network that we can use for plotting and exporting. If we go and have a look at the attributes that have been assigned to the drainage network now, there's going to be many, many more attributes, which are standard 12D attributes on the pits and the pipes that have been assigned via the drainage network editor and are used in plotting and exporting and reporting. So we have string, pit, and pipe attribute types. So really, just to complete the creation side of things, especially when you're looking at doing an as-built, this information can now be grabbed straight away from designers, and they can obviously start running the analysis and putting other more design parameters onto the drainage network. Or if you simply want to get your outputs, you can go into the plot area of the drainage network editor now that all of those attributes have been assigned. And you can choose your plot parameter file types to determine what attributes are displayed and where. So I'm just going to run our simple drainage labels plot and a drainage long section plot, and we'll display those in some views once that's been completed. It's taking a little longer because I'm actually, in my long section plots, I'm taking in the new feature that came in version 11, when you plot to model, to be able to distribute all of the different particular sheets into a single model and have those automatically translated. Okay, that's finished. If I turn on the labels model that's been created and zoom into a particular item of the data, you'll see that we've got those attributes labeled with specified line styles and symbol styles and text styles. And conversely, under the drainage long plot side of things, it's also created and plotted all of our drainage long section plots as well at the same time. So you can get that information very, very quickly from a spreadsheet information into a usable 12D drainage network. Now, just a couple of things before I replot this when I come in with a custom. I'm going to use the multi-string editor that came inside 12D version 12 to do a bulk change of some string properties. I'm just going to take a 12D data source and choose everything within the as-built drainage labels view. But all I'm wanting to edit is the actual text properties within that drainage labels model. And I want to change all of those text to a paper size text, so they all vary in size based on the plotting scale. Now, this is something that you won't have to do in version 12 because you can set a paper size text inside the drainage PPF editor. So I'm going to go and actually change the plotting scale for my drainage labels view to 1 to 500. And you'll see that all of those drainage labels have halved in size because they're now a paper size text. And just a tip, for those of you who are new to using the drainage strings or the drainage plots within 12D, there is a really cool option under drafting multi-string translate, which allows you just to very quickly pick up that text plotted from the drainage strings, in particular the pits and the pipes, and move those around very quickly to be able to tidy up your drainage plot for plotting straight out of 12D. And that works for both the pit labels and also any of the pipe labels that you have assigned in your drainage PPF. And once we replot that, if I don't have full clean of drainage model beforehand, 12D will remember where I've placed those attribute labels on the plot. So that's basically part one of the training webinar today, which is creating a 3D drainage network straight from a spreadsheet. And as I say, that example spreadsheet is available. We can email it to you, or we can put it up on a 12D Synergy link. Just some pointers on part number two. So part two of the demonstration is going to be doing the reverse. It's going to be going from 12D model back into spreadsheet, and there are various different pointers to be aware of when we're doing this. The export-import function of the drainage network editor is a really great way to make bulk changes or very quickly make multiple changes to a drainage network and get that drainage network updated. You can add new attributes to the drainage network through this scenario for plotting or custom reporting. Just make sure to untick export all junction pits if you don't want to have repeated rows of the junction pits, for example, A5 listed 3 or 4 times in the export. And you can also do this outside the drainage network editor using the drainage toolbar item drainage network export. So it has the functionality which I'll show you right at the end of the demonstration. So part two, the first part of the demonstration, is going to be exporting the drainage network attributes out to a spreadsheet, editing them, making bulk changes, and then updating our drainage network back inside 12D. So I'll just flick back into 12D, and we'll work on this drainage network that we've actually created initially using from spreadsheet. So I'll go back to the editor. There is an item in the network editor right under the set pit details called import export. And this allows you to export your drainage network or import a drainage network in multiple different ways, either from a spreadsheet clipboard or to other third-party software programs. I'm just going to be using the spreadsheet clipboard. Every time I run this, 12D will be updating a file name, a text file called clipboard.txt. So even though I have the data on the clipboard inside Microsoft, if I wanted to take that information, pass it across to another computer, it's very handy. All of the information will be updated every time I run in this clipboard.txt file. As I said, if you don't want multiple instances of your junction pits, you can untick export all junction pits. And the first thing I'm going to use is I'm going to export every single drainage attribute from the drainage network into the spreadsheet clipboard. And every time I do this, it's going to be updating this list file name, which we'll get to in a moment. So I'm just going to run that. And then I'm going to open up a spreadsheet editor. In my case, it's going to be Microsoft Excel, and I can simply come into a new workbook and paste all of that information straight from the drainage network into a spreadsheet. Now, the order that these are reported is not important. The position, the number of columns that you have, you can quite happily go and delete any columns that you like. They're not really going to take into effect. You can move columns from one position to another. Really, the most important thing is if you want to take that data back inside to 12D, the first cell that you start copying from must have the word 12D in it. And you can see that it's taken out our string attributes, our pit attributes, and our pipe attributes. And it's given us what that particular pit or pipe attribute name is, and that will match what you see in the attributes editor inside 12D. And as I said, when we created the drainage network, it just took the default pit or manhole type from what was set in the default. So I'm going to go and change that and update that. So I'm going to find where my actual user attribute when I created the drainage network was. And my user pit type is currently on a column AG. I'm just going to take that whole column. I'm going to cut that column just to make life easier, and I'm going to paste it back right beside the 12D attribute for the pit type. And I'm simply going to highlight all of those and copy them, put those into my 12D pit type attribute, and these pit types obviously need to match what's been loaded in the drainage.4D file. So you can make bulk changes to the attributes. If you encounter an attribute in the spreadsheet that's got an asterisk beside it, that's a calculated value. You can quite happily change that in the spreadsheet, but as soon as you go back into 12D and hit set bit details, that value is going to be recalculated and the attribute is going to be automatically updated. And you can also delete attributes out of the network by putting the delete item in where you want the attributes to be cleared out or deleted. If you want to insert new user-defined attributes that will go in your reports or your plots or your long section plots, we can simply create new attributes directly within the spreadsheet. In this case, I'm going to create a new pipe attribute called bedding type. And it's going to be a text type attribute, so I can free text type in whatever I want. I'm just going to put in a initial value for my bedding type of HS2. And I'm going to copy that down to every single pipe within the network. So you can move columns around, you can add additional columns as long as you've got the correct lowercase attribute type that you're putting it into. And to get it back into 12D, as I said, the cell that you start copying from needs to have the word 12D in it. So I'm just going to take the data that I've changed or added, and I'm going to copy it up to the spreadsheet clipboard. Then back inside 12D, I'm going to change the operation from export to import, and as I re-import this data from the spreadsheet clipboard, it's going to update my drainage labels, and it's also going to update my drainage long sections as well as the drainage network itself. So as soon as I hit run, 12D is going to go away and update the drainage design and replot out the plans on the long sections. Right, that's done. Immediately you'll see in the 3D view that because I changed the pit type to an item that's got a particular width and a height or a size inside my drainage.4d file, that it's updated my drainage network. It's also replotted my drainage labels, and where I've changed the pit type, it's replotted them to have the appropriate symbology on there. And if I go back to set pit details, and then that will update all of the attributes. So if I go back to the editor, I'm just going to set the pit details before I have a look at that. Have a look at the changed attributes. If I just redraw that 3D view, you'll see that it's updated the pit sizes and the pit diameter from one to another. So taking a quick look at those attributes on our drainage network, because I inserted a new column and wanted a new pipe attribute, if I just check under the pipe tab, under the string attributes editor, then I will, at some stage, actually have a new attribute type called bedding type, and that's the value that was entered within the spreadsheet. So I can now use that attribute to export out again, to export to custom reports, or use in my plots. So it's a very, very quick and easy way to make bulk changes and add additional metadata to your drainage network. Now, the last part of this training webinar is actually creating custom outputs rather than just outputting every single attribute. Just a few pointers on the custom outputs. Customized list files are a way to generate outputs of drainage attribute data exactly how you want it, in the order that you want it. 12D model is shipped with many list files to help you start, and I'll demonstrate some of those shipped list files after I come to the end of the training. List file commands can be used to refine the outputs, and we'll demonstrate that as well. And an easy start for a list file is to copy and edit the output list text created on an all data output, which I'll also demonstrate. And the custom commands inside the list file that you can use, and as I'll demonstrate, are listed there, and they're also listed in the training notes. Right. What we're going to do now is we're going to actually export the drainage network to spreadsheet, but we're going to customize the data that we output and how the data is actually presented. If I go from the drainage network editor back into the import and export part of the drainage network editor, I can change the preset output that I'm going to output to the spreadsheet clipboard, or the format that I've specified. Rather than do all data, I'm going to create or use a customized list file. And the customized list file is simply a text file that tells 12D exactly what attributes you want and where. And as I mentioned in the PowerPoint slide, a very easy, quick and easy way to start is from using the generated output list text file when you're doing all data output. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open that text file. And the data that was generated in the spreadsheet was all of this attributes in the order that we wanted it. If you see a command or a title inside the list file called pit data, then 12D knows that every attribute following that pit data command is going to be a pit attribute. And you'll see a little bit further down where we flip over from taking pit attributes to taking pipe attributes with the simple line of pipe data. Now you can have as many spaces or as many carriage returns as you like inside these customized list files to actually make it easier to read. We ignore carriage returns and we ignore spaces, but tabs are actually very important. So rather than generate that gargantuan list that came out when I did the all data, I'm just going to take and modify some of those attributes, what I do and what I don't want to go out into the report file. So I'm just going to take some, or delete some rows of attributes. I'm not really interested in the road name or the road chainage. Excuse me. I'm interested in the pit chainage, however, and the order that I would like it, rather than having a easting, northing, and then the elevation, I might want to go northing and easting and then the elevation, in which case I can simply take that line and put it above. So I can go Y coordinate, X coordinate, and then the cover elevation. Then when it comes to pipe data, or pipe attributes, I'm not really interested in the hydraulic grade line upstream or downstream because I haven't run an analysis on this network. And I'm not really interested in the pit HDL data either. And the flow and the velocity, I do want my user-defined attributes that were brought through initially, my user pit type, my condition and my install date, but the pit symbol angle and the rest I'm not particularly interested in. So I'm going to take down to set out Z out. And I do want my set out X and Y to be above my set out Z. So I'm just going to copy and paste those lines through. And that's probably enough to actually demonstrate what you can do. I'll just take out every other attribute following those. That's me too. And so I'll have a cut down customized list file which determines which attributes that I want reported out to a spreadsheet in what order. And I'm just going to save that as a different TXT file name. So I'm going to call this output list reduced. And save that. So back in the network editor, when we go into the export functionality, I'm going to export via a customized list file, and the customized list file that I'm going to use is the one that I've just edited called output list reduced. And I'm going to run that. Back inside a spreadsheet program, I'm just going to open a new workbook and paste that information through. And you can see it's a much reduced data set from what was initially put through, and it's only outputting the attributes that I actually require. Now what you can do is you can further refine the way that it actually outputs these values and really customize it into something that suits your company procedures or your company standard documents. I know I said in the PowerPoint never ever start from scratch, but I'm going to do just that. I'm actually going to start from a brand new customized list file called webinar. And I'm going to open up that text file. And I'm going to just place it on the side of my screen, and on the other half of the screen, just to see exactly what I'm getting, is I'm going to pull up the string attribute list, particularly starting off with the pit type attributes. And I'm going to put that on the right hand side of the screen just so I can see what I want. I can copy and paste from here, but just for the purposes of the webinar, rather than have the text file go away, I'm going to actually go and type that in by hand. So you'll see the list of pit attributes that I have available for exporting in my custom report file, and because they are pit attributes, I'm going to start with the command pit data. And some of the attributes that I'm going to take out is pit name, is to start with. Then I'd like the pit type. Pit name, pit type. Just refresh that list. Pit diameter is always important. And I might just do my set out Y, set out X, and then set out Z attributes for my northing, easting, and elevation. And actually, if I want to put in the spreadsheet what the current pit is, and then the downstream pit, there's an attribute there for DS pit, which will list the next pit downstream in the network, which is the DS pit attribute. That's probably enough for some pit information now. What I'd like to do is go and take out some pipe attributes into my custom output. So to tell 12D I'm taking out pipe attributes, I simply type in the command pipe data. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out the pipe type. I'm going to take out the diameter, the upstream invert, and the downstream invert, the pipe size, the calculated pipe length, and the calculated pipe grade. And you can use wildcards in here. And then if I wanted to flick back to a pit attribute, I can simply re-repeat that command pit data, and it would know that anything after that is going to be a pit attribute. And I'm going to take out pit.description. And rather than type that one out, I'm just going to copy and paste it directly from my attribute list within 12D, which is another way of also doing that. So I'm going to save this brand new customized list file and use that in my next export. Just exporting that raw, if I specify that webinar text file and then hit run, which has gone to the spreadsheet clipboard, and I'm just going to simply open up another workbook or another worksheet in Microsoft Excel and paste that through. So you can see it's taken those attributes in the order that I require into the spreadsheet clipboard. And what we can do is we can further refine those using some of the commands available to us within the customized list file. If I expand out or fit all of those columns, you'll see that especially the set out Z has got a great deal of decimal places, as have the calculated pipe length, the grade, and the upstream invert and the downstream invert. I might not want those to 3 decimal places, I might want those to 2. And also, the value that comes from the pipe diameter attribute is currently in a meter unit. Your standards in your custom reports might be that they have to be in millimeters rather than meters. So I'm just going to demonstrate a couple of the additional or refining commands that you can put within the customized list file to help you get exactly what you want. So for the set out Y, what I'd like is I'd like that not in 7 decimal places, I would like that to 2 decimal places. So what we can do is put in decimals 2, set out Z, and that's going to round that following attribute to 2 decimal places. And of course I would like that for the X and the Y and the Z. And I also would like to round off my invert upstream, invert downstream, my calculated pipe length, and my calculated pipe size to 2 decimal places. And with the diameter attribute, as it's currently the unit is in millimeters, what we can do is we can apply a scaling factor to whatever that value is in the attribute by activating the command factor. So I'm going to factor by 1000 whatever value is in the diameter attribute. And if I save that, and inside 12D, rerun that customized list file, and paste it into a brand new sheet, you'll see that we have the exact decimal places on the X, the Y and the Z. Our pipe diameter attribute is now actually being exported as a millimetre value as opposed to a metre value, and we've also rounded out, invert upstream and downstream, our grades and our calculated pipe length. So you can customize exactly how you want those values to be, and when it comes to the headers up here, you can actually type in free text and get that exported into the file by using the header option. So if I want to completely override these three rows here, in which is taking out the standard 12D headers or column headers, I can simply put in the command header, and then under the next line, free type in whatever I want to be the titles or the free text inside that particular cell. And the way that you determine which cell, which column it goes into, is via a tab delimitation. Oh, beg your pardon. I'm going to put that right up the top. It doesn't have to be right up the top, but I'm going to put it right up the top for my headers. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in what the title for those column headers are going to be, and I'm going to separate them to jump from column to column via a tab on the keyboard. So my first title might be pit ID, and then the next one might be to pit, and I'm separating these via a tab. So I'm going from a pit ID to the to pit, pit type, then the pit size, then the northing, the easting, and I'm going to call this lid level rather than the set out Z. So I've got northing, easting, lid level, and then I go into the pipe data, which is the pipe type, the pipe diameter, the US invert, the DS invert, and then from memory I have the length and the grade. So all those values are separated by a tab. Now, the easiest way to determine whether you've got all those tabs in the right place is to just go back and save it and run it. And this time I'm going to remove all of the data that's currently in there rather than opening up a new tab. And I'm going to paste the data directly from the spreadsheet clipboard. So you see the headers separated by a tab, they allow you to place free text into exactly the cell that you wish inside the file. If you're going to be pasting this into a company standard report output, you may have formula or checking routines based on those values that you have actually inside your own worksheet. So let's say we had a calculation or a check on the pipe grade. So I've got the upstream invert, the downstream invert. I'll just expand all those out. Oh, pipe diameter. Right. I didn't have a tab in there. That's okay. I think you get the idea. We'll fix that in a moment. So we've got the diameter, we've got the upstream invert, downstream invert, and we will have the length somewhere in there and the calculated grade. So right after the diameter, what I want to do is I want to insert a blank row because I'm going to have a calculation in there. So if I come down to, that's what we've got. Under pipe size, I should say, I've got diameter there twice. I'm actually going to put in a blank column by entering in the command blank. Save that. Run the file. this case, I'm going to paste that into a blank worksheet. So you can now see that I have a blank column which will be available for doing calculations inside a pre-formatted report file that your company may have. Just if you are going to be doing that, whenever you paste directly from the spreadsheet clipboard, if you have a predefined formula in a particular column and you do the paste directly out of 12D, it will overwrite whatever formula there are. So the procedure that we recommend is that you have a worksheet that you paste your 12D data into directly, and you may have another worksheet that has that column N and the particular formula in there. And there's a couple of things to note on that. So let's say for column number N, if I had a formula that equaled what I'm hoping, we'll double check that. It's J, K, and L. It had J minus K, beg your pardon, try that again, equals J minus K divided by N multiplied by 1,000. And I'm guaranteed to not get this right on the webinar, but that's okay. Okay, that will give us a value. So this may be your pre-formatted spreadsheet workbook that has all of your formula for checking in it. So what we recommend is you have a workbook that you take the 12D information into and paste that directly out of 12D. Copy it from that paste worksheet. And when you enter that data into your pre-formatted, do a paste special. And under the paste special, we want to take the values only, and we want to skip any blank columns. And if I go OK on that one, that will fill inside, retain the formula or any formulas that are in the worksheet, and adopt those and take them on the pasted data. So I think you can see that there's very, very flexible ways that you can actually create your own custom reports out of 12D using this import-export initially from the Drainage Network Editor. But you don't have to do it from the Drainage Network Editor itself. There is an item on the Drainage toolbar on the stock standard 12D install that's called Drainage Network Export. And if I fire up that operation, very similar, but it's independent of the Drainage Network Editor, where I can just specify the model that I'd like to export, how I'd like to export it, either an all data or a customized list file, and you'll have your customized list files available to you either from the job or from the library. And I'm going to create a file called testing.csv, and I don't want to export all junction pits. So that's run through. Instead, all of the data has been exported, and again back into spreadsheet. Well, actually, no, not back into a spreadsheet. What I'm going to do is open that up independently because it's a CSV file in itself. And you'll see it's opened the testing.csv file in the order using the customized list file that we've just created in the training demonstration, and it's very easy to do. We have a number of customized list files loaded with 12D that you can use, so you don't have to start from scratch. Under the lib, most of the text files under the library loaded in 12Ds that start with drainage are a customized list file. So if I was to activate the drainage pit schedule customized list file and open that text file up, you can see that the only thing that's contained within that file are the particular commands and the format and the variation that we've just gone through in the training webinar. So this is a pit schedule. If I export that, open this up, the resultant file, that's a customized list file which is purely about pit set out or pit schedules X, Y, Z and depths and size. Okay. In summary, 12D model allows interaction with spreadsheets for the creation, modification and reporting of drainage networks. These can be used by anyone working with drainage strings. Company standard practices can be created with flexible options. And don't start from scratch, there are plenty of examples available. The only limit to creating these custom list files is your time and the inclination to do it. And if there's any questions and answers, I will hand it back to Lisa.
Thanks, Dylan. I think your presentation was obviously very comprehensive and clear for everyone, because we haven't had any questions through, which is good news. So yeah, if anyone does have any in the meantime, though, feel free to email them through and we'll get back to you after that. The recording of this webinar will be available in coming days through our website and our YouTube channel. Our final 2 training webinars for 2016 are 12D Field Pickup on the 16th of November and Putting Contour Labels Where You Want Them on the 8th of December. We've also got another 2 Industry Solutions webinars we'll be slotting in before the end of 2016, so do see our website for details of all of those. We'll update it with some great 2017 topics in coming weeks and also continue to keep you posted through email and social media. If you need to contact us in the meantime, our details will be on the screen shortly. That concludes our presentation for today. Thank you for attending, and we hope to see you at future webinars.